Lucy, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a cool spot.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And you have traveled today. So the next person that tells me you're too far away, and you've traveled from San Francisco to Vienna to here in Reading.
That's right, I did.
That's quite an effort. So well done.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Excellent. Lucy, really interesting conversation for us to have today. Why do you do what you do?
I am a professional organizer because I think that being organized is kind of a secret weapon. I realized when I was in graduate school that there were a lot of smart people around me that were doing really well in school and kicking off great careers. And I was managing to keep up. And I was like, I'm not as smart as these people. How am I managing to keep up? And then, you get to know people and you maybe go and visit their apartment or you go pick them up. And it's like, oh, they're working with kind of a cluttered space. I could not function in this kind of space. And it was then that I realized I've always been tidy. I've always been organized. My dad taught me how. And so I was working with a space that really supported what I was trying to do. Whereas my friends, amazingly smart and successful, but it was harder for them in the spaces that they were in. So that was kind of the realization of, oh, this is more than just it looks nice. This is something that enables me to keep up at a level where ordinarily I wouldn't be able to.
There's a lot of psychology involved in that, isn't it?
Yes.
If you think someone's off doing great work in some respects and, they're off doing something fantastic, but you said but coming home to a tidy place or somewhere where they can at least sit down and relax in some respect, there's, if it's a total mess coming home, it's going to be a bit of a challenge coming back.
It is challenging. And it's challenging not just in the overtly obvious way of walking into a cluttered space and going, oh God, I have to deal with this. It's also the fact that clutter actually raises your cortisol level, even if you don't realize that it is. So there are people that I've met in the course of being an organizer, and they'll say, oh, I don't mind the clutter. I'm fine. And they may feel fine, but they may also have elevated cortisol levels without even realizing it.
It's crazy. I never knew that it would actually raise cortisol levels. But
yes.
I can imagine it, the stress of coming back in, because it's the stress of one more thing to do. Just had a busy day. I've just done my long shift of whatever, or session or whatever you're doing. And then you're coming back and oh, I forgot I haven't tidied the house yet.
Yes. And something that I've realized over the course of 10 plus years of working with clients is clutter is so stressful because each item represents a decision you have to make. So it's not just I need to sweep all this stuff into a closet and shut the door. It's to really deal with it and get to the bottom of it. I have to make a decision about each item. Do I have to keep it or not? Does it represent an action item or not? Do I need to store it or not? And the volume of decisions to be made can be really overwhelming.
I wonder how you make that decision. I read somewhere years ago that the things in the home should either be beautiful or useful.
Yes, that was, the guy who started the arts and crafts movement, whose name I cannot remember at this moment, but yes. And I believe that, through becoming an organizer, I have turned a very sharp eye on my own home. And I am very picky about what I bring into my home because I see the other side. I help people get rid of so much stuff. And so if something's coming into my home, I'm very critical about, is that really going to add value to my life? Is that going to make my home more beautiful? Or is it just going to end up being something I have to decide to toss in, 2 months, 2 years?
So for someone who's listening to this and they're thinking, I'm so frustrated. My house is a total tip. I want it to be better, but I just don't have the time. I don't have the energy. Where do they start?
I think it starts with a mindset shift. And that sounds kind of woo-woo, but I run into a lot of people who tell me, oh, I'm just not an organized person. And if you define it as a personality trait in that way, then you kind of say, well, if I'm not organized, I'll never be able to get organized. And you sort of are cutting yourself off from progress from the jump. And so I say it's not a personality trait. I say it's a set of skills. Being organized is a set of skills that anyone can learn. They're simple skills. They're not necessarily easy to implement, but they're simple. And so if you can learn them and practice them over time, you can become that organized person you never thought you would be. But it is a process. It's not like those TV shows where, this team of lovely ladies will come in and they bring all these containers and they put everything in rainbow order and they label everything and it's so perfect and then they leave and it's done. That's not real life. Real life is like creating a practice every day of thinking about what you bring into your home, making decisions about what's already in your home, and taking that small amount of time every day rather than a large amount of time every week or every month to make sure that your systems stay in place.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, isn't it? It's just like it's like Atomic Habits, just doing a tiny little bit of
absolutely
of work today and saves, going to I remember years and years and years ago when I first started as a man living on my own and also with my partner back then. Neither of us were really minded to kind of do the tidying and the cleaning. And it's also the first place we'd ever lived in didn't have a dishwasher. And the dishwasher would just pile up and pile up and pile up. And it would get so big, you're like, oh, let's just do it tomorrow. Let's just do it tomorrow. And then suddenly you're like, oh my God, the whole place needs like a 2 to 3 hour session, which is all of Saturday now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like going into the weekend thinking, oh God, we've got more rubbish or work to do before we can even go and have fun and enjoy ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah, it's that pile up, because that's sort of the delayed gratification thing that humans are so bad at. We're really terrible at understanding how something we do now is going to affect us in the future. We're much more likely to do something that feels good right now. And what feels good right now is not doing the tidying or the dishwashing or whatever. What feels good right now is putting it off. And we underestimate how painful it's going to feel later when we go, oh God, I have this giant pile that I have to deal with in order to go on with my normal life.
Interesting. On the mindset, what else is there on the mindset? So it's just doing a little bit every day.
Doing a little bit every day. And I think the mindset I hear a lot, and sometimes when I'm working with a client, I can already see them being like, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. There's that little rebel in your head that's like, I won't do this. I can't be controlled. I won't be locked down into this daily tidying habit. But it's that shift of, if I do a little every day, I don't have to ever do the big jobs. Like, if you stay organized, you never have to get organized. So that's a big one. And another mindset shift that and this came from experience, not from sort of any prior ideological framework. But I work with a lot of families, a lot of couples with kids, and it somehow transpires, even in our modern time, that organizing is mom's job. And it's not that that's wrong. It's that in most families with 2 working parents, that's just not realistic. There's a lot of data out there that, especially in the US, but certainly in the UK and the EU as well, that in 2-parent households where both parents are working, the mom still does more of the homekeeping tasks than the dad, on average. Of course, your mileage may vary, but on average. And so making it so that it's not just mom's job, that everybody participates, and that part of that is teaching kids to participate, is really, really important. And most of the work that I do with my clients who are women is to get them out of that mindset. It's not like, hey, dad, you got to help. It's more like, hey, mom, you got to share the wealth, delegate and teach, instead of trying to just I'm just going to do it all and then it'll be fine and then we can move on.
Yeah, I definitely agree with delegate and teach.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love many things about my wife, but one of the things I love about my wife is she's really clear on her expectation. And I think the big thing is we don't always know. And I'm not trying to kind of say we don't but I think the big thing is, if there are roles and there are jobs and those sorts of things, we can't read your mind. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So the thing that I love about her, and I often say that I always know what your expectation is, because she will either sent me a list, sent me a WhatsApp, and I'm just like, just tell me what it is. And I'll be really clear. All right, I'll get this, and this done. Absolutely fine, sure. I'm not saying they're not her jobs to delegate, but she's at home more than I am. So that communication, I think it always comes back to communication between husband and wife, or between partners. And it's like, what's my expectation for you? So I feel like that's actually a really big part, because I'm more than happy to do anything I can to support. We've got 2 children, and I've got a 4-month-old baby now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And that means there's always stuff to be done. And she's working unbelievably hard to look after little Luca, who's going through a bit of a phase with teething. And it's like, cool, just communicate. That's all it is. There'll be no resistance. I'll absolutely do anything I can. So I feel like that's a big part of it. How much of your work and coaching is kind of that communication piece?
More than I thought it would be. So when you say that communication is so important, I absolutely agree. And what I see a lot of is people making assumptions and not realizing that they're all making assumptions. So a lot of these sort of gender roles are based on like, well, in my family of origin, my mom did this and my dad did this. So I assume that I'm going to do this and you're going to do that. And we don't actually sit down and talk about it. And part of what I end up doing is asking really dumb questions. My clients sometimes will look at me as, are you all right? Like, that's a really dumb question. But the answers will sometimes surprise you. I mean, something as simple as like, I had this couple that were my clients a few years back, and the big thing that they were fighting about was this pile of stuff in their bedroom. And according to both of them, the pile was her pile, and it was taking over, and it was this amorphous blob that was taking over, and they just wanted it gone. And he was pretty like not happy with her about this pile, and she was feeling a lot of shame about this pile. And okay, that's fine. We'll go through the pile. So we start going through it. And I remember asking him at the beginning, I was like, so you're sure that this is all hers and I'm just going to work with her today and you're not going to be present? And he's like, yes, great. By the time we work through the pile, I have a nice little stack of stuff that's all his. I'm like, hello, we found this in the pile. What would you like me to do with it? And they were both so surprised because the assumption was this is her pile. She's got to deal with it. Instead of sort of asking the dumb question of, well, have we looked at what's actually in there? And we need to make decisions about that. So I ask a lot of dumb questions that bring up surprising results because we just operate on assumptions day to day in order to just get through life.
Yeah, I bet. Give me some more examples of dumb questions. I love those.
Oh, what do you use this for? Is a question I ask all the time. Even like in a kitchen where you would imagine a certain kitchen tool is pretty self-explanatory, but sometimes I'll find ones in weird places. And so I'm like, this spoon that's over here, do you use this for anything in particular? Because it's not with the other spoons. And sometimes the answer is, yes, I scoop out my cereal with that. Or sometimes it's, I have no idea why that's over there. That doesn't even match the rest of our spoons. Let's get rid of it. So, but that spoon might have been there for 5 years. And no one has asked each other why it's there. So those kinds of dumb questions.
Things get left there, then forgotten about. And then it's like, oh, she must have left it. He must have left it there.
Correct. Oh, it must be there for a reason. I'll just leave it there. In my family, we call it the shower head problem because my parents had a low flow shower head in their bathroom for years and years and years. And nobody said anything about it until one day as a child, I happened to take a shower in their bathroom. And I went to one parent and said, this water pressure is very low. And they, oh, that's the way your dad likes it. Went and talked to my dad. Dad, this water pressure is really, oh, that's the way your mom likes it. And no one had asked each other anything. And I see these kind of shower head problems all the time.
How impactful can it be on a relationship if the home's a bit of a mess, not tidy, and, someone wants to do something about it? How impactful is that? It
can be very impactful. I have seen that an organized space will really reduce interpersonal conflict in a home, whether it's between spouses, whether it's between parents and kids, because it's just such a flashpoint. And it can be a flashpoint of blame and shame. Like, you're always so untidy. You never pick up after yourself. Your socks are always on the living room floor. I mean, that's not a fun place to start the day. Whereas if you start the day with a home that's like pretty tidy and everyone knows what they're supposed to do and where their own stuff is, everything just flows a lot more smoothly. And something I see a lot in families is the only person who knows where everything is mom. And so kids are always, Mom, where's my jacket? Mom, where are my shoes? If you have an organizing system and you teach everyone in your family how to use it, then they always know where their stuff is. And they have that incentive to keep their own areas pretty tidy, because if no one else is going to do it for you, then you're going to kind of pick up the slack and go, oh, I need to make sure that I hang my jacket on the same hook every day so that when I go to find it, it's there again.
Yeah, it's actually, I was just reflecting there. I haven't thought about this for years. But so I was in a long-term relationship a while ago before I met my wife. And I was with this lady for six years or so. And the last 2 years of that relationship, we kind of got to the point where we're not too sure if this is going to work or not. One of my issues was that I was traveling a lot and coming home and traveling. And some nights I'd be home 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and I would come home, and I'm not saying it was her role or my role or whatever it was, but over the time, the house was always a mess. It was always a mess. And I just, and I just always remember just thinking, I don't really want to live like this.
Yes.
As in, I'm working really hard. And so she's working hard too. But when we're coming together, we're like, before we can really sit down and enjoy our time together, this house is a total mess. There's clothes everywhere. There's this on the floor. And I'm like, I'm not really that happy about coming home to this place. And it wasn't a slight on either of us, but for some reason, we just didn't have a system that worked. And therefore, we would get into these things where it's just like, this house is a total mess. And it's, I reflect on it because that was one of the things where we sat down and we talked at length around. It was like, well, how are we going to, because you can be in love with each other as you like, and you can have all the passion and everything else. But actually, it's a real fundamental thing. If the house isn't in a good place, it's hard to continue with that passion and also continue to have that respect for people. So I think it can have a real huge impact on a relationship.
It really can. And the thing that I see often is when these are big problems, it's probably because at least one of the partners didn't learn those organizing skills when they were growing up. And whatever comes from your family of origin is what you're going to act out in your adulthood to a certain extent, unless you're very actively considering changing that. So yeah, it's sort of like when you know that there's a problem, but you don't know how to fix it, that's where people get really frustrated.
Do you think a lot of this is learned behaviors from growing up?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, although you do see it go both ways, right? So children of hoarders tend to be either hoarders themselves or very, very clean and tidy. So it's sort of either they take on the behaviors or they react very strongly to the behaviors. And it kind of depends on each person's psychology a little bit. But yeah, I think a lot of times you pick up the habits, even unconsciously. Again, assumptions. We make so many assumptions in the course of daily life in order to just continue and not get bogged down in details.
Yeah. And if I think about, I'm going to make a sweeping guess here, right? That quite often in these relationships, sometimes it's the man that looks like the untidy one, or is the untidy one, possibly. I
mean, it can be, but the weird variation that I see a lot is where the man is actually tidier, but because of time, jobs, gender roles, whatever, the woman is responsible for organizing. So it's like, that's a really tough one because she's not as good at it, but she's got to do it. So he's like, I really want this, but I'm not doing, it's a really big disconnect. And with those kinds of things, I'm focused on trying to teach skills to the woman if she's going to stay responsible for the stuff, but also maybe suggesting like some of the tasks can be shared a little bit more, especially if the other person in the relationship finds them easy, finds them to be necessary. And something that's super important too is sharing a definition of what tidy is, because people have wildly differing definitions. I mean, I've done consultations for people who will say on the phone, oh, I'm such a hoarder. And I go in and I'm like, I don't even think you need me. Like, this is very organized. And then I've gone to consultations where they're like, well, I'm a little bit untidy, just need a little bit of help touching things up. And I'll go in and I'm like, this is borderline something I can't accept as a job because I would need personal protective equipment to work in this space. So people's standards vary wildly, and it's sort of like coming to a shared definition of what clean and tidy means to you as a family. That's so important.
Do you actually sit down with a couple and talk that through and kind of feel like you write it down, rules and responsibilities? Or
I don't, because I am not a coach, and so I don't want to get outside of my wheelhouse. But I ask a lot of questions as we're doing the organizing work, and I try to ask questions in a way that lead people to go, why didn't I think about asking that question? Maybe I need to have a conversation. And sometimes I do have sort of throw little things in. Like I have a project that's starting pretty soon, and it's a big, beautiful condo in a giant, gorgeous building in downtown San Francisco. And the husband just keeps stashing stuff in any open closet space. And the wife is up to here frustrated with that. And so I was sort of talking to her. I'm like, what's good about this is you haven't filled up all the space yet. So we're not in a place where it's do or die. So that's great. And you have the opportunity to sort of sit down together and be like, what's going to be the boundary for the husband stuff? Like where are we going to draw the line so that we can share this space effectively? And they had not had that conversation. I don't know if they have yet. I don't know if they will, but I was able to make that suggestion. Like giving somebody a really delineated boundary can actually be really empowering, because then they know within that boundary, I can do what I want. And then outside that boundary, I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that. My a good friend of mine, I went to his place a while back, And it's really interesting because they've got a beautiful house, they've got plenty of money, and then the whole house was beautiful. And I could see, they made it kind of lovely, and also I was round, so they kind of probably made it a little bit extra special with some candles and everything else. And I said, where should I put my bag? And I went up to his office. I opened the door, and I literally looked around. I was like, mate, you've got your pants everywhere. I'm like, you knew I was coming, right? I'm like, he goes, yeah, it's my room. That's how it is. And I'm like, right. He goes, that's how it is. I'm like, yeah, I know that. But like the drawers are just all, there's stuff spinning out. There's stuff all, I mean, literally I can count 4, 5, 6, 7 pairs of pants on the floor. Like your laptop. I mean, it's just, I was like, the rest of your house, because he's a mate, I was able to just laugh and go, this doesn't align to the rest of your house. This is so hilarious to me.
Yeah.
There was still like wet towels on the floor. I was like, this is shocking. He goes, yeah, that's how I am. I'm like, okay. Do you want to look at that at all? He's like, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is something that I run into a lot when you meet people out in the world. What do you do? Well, I'm a professional organizer. And oftentimes someone will say, oh, my mom really needs you. Or, oh, my husband really needs you. And I always say, if they would like to work with me, awesome, wonderful. I would love to. But if someone's happy with how they are, there is nothing I can do to change them. I've been brought in a couple of times by a sort of semi-disgruntled spouse being like, you need to help my spouse get organized. I'm like, if they are not open to change, if they don't see that there's an issue and they would like to fix it, there's nothing I can do, because it's not really about the stuff. Like I work with stuff, hands-on with stuff every day, but it's more about like how we think about the stuff, how we use the stuff, and how we want the stuff to serve us instead of us serving the stuff. And if someone's happy with their relationship with their stuff, if they like having their pants on the floor and their wet towel and their laptop strewn around, nobody can change that except them.
Yeah. I feel like this can really, like there's a little bit of give and get here, because like I feel like that would really impact the marriage in some respects, because it's like, when you start to have sort of questions and you just think, oh, I don't like that about them, or that's frustrating to me. And it's like the first little creak in a relationship where you just think, oh, okay, wish that was different. And that's where it's interesting to come back to mindset, which is in your view is simple, which is, are they just gonna even try? And have a mindset of, let's kind of make this to be our, a nice home for us to both to be in.
Yeah. And that reminds me of a conversation I had with my husband very early on when we very first bought our first condo and we were newly married. We bought the condo and I was finishing up graduate school. And so he was living there by himself, and there wasn't very much furniture in his defense. So it was a little hard to live there. But I came to visit one weekend and it was a total mess. I mean, just stuff everywhere. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? I thought he was, he's kind of messy, but we were pretty young. I was like, he'll learn. So at the time I was sort of horrified, and I was like, what's going on? Why are you living like this? He said, well, I don't have any furniture. There's nowhere to put stuff. Okay, fine. But the pattern sort of continues. And I sort of finally came to a point where I asked the dumb question. And I said, so do you like living in a mess like this? And he was like, no, I absolutely do not. I was like, so you want to have like a nice home where we can entertain and have people over and we enjoy it? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, do you expect me to pick up after you? And he was like, absolutely not. I do not expect you to pick up after me. I was like, so if you're not going to pick up after you and I'm not going to pick up after you, who's going to do it? And he was kind of like, it's a good point. Never thought of that. And that moment was sort of the genesis of like the rest of our relationship. I've been able to come back to like, hey, which of us is going to deal with this? Not like you need to do this, but more, okay, can we both recognize this as a task that needs to get done? Now, is it more appropriate for you to do it or for me to do it, instead of, me being in a place where I'm like, how dare you be so messy, which admittedly was my first instinct.
But that's the funny thing, is because your first instinct is probably the truthful one. But what you're explaining is just a tactful way of trying to agree and get something.
Exactly.
I can easily see that a lot of partners would just be, this is your job. This is your mess. You need to sort it out. And then they're on the defensive. I was working late. You don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, the shared definition of success is so important. And that's actually the first question I ask my clients in the intake form is, what does being organized and success mean to you and your family is sort of the implied extension of that question. And if I do a consultation with a couple, I make sure I ask both of them with eye contact during the consultation, because often one partner, not always a woman, will sort of steamroll the conversation. And so I try and really give eye contact to each partner and say, what does this mean to you? What do you want? And sometimes people are surprised that what they want out of it is different. And coming to a shared understanding of what organized means and what the systems should do for a family is super important. Because I sometimes think that people are trying for a standard that is unrealistic. And that just frustrates everybody. It frustrates the person who feels like they need to be in this place. And it frustrates everybody else in the household. It's like, why are you making us do this? This is ridiculous. This is a level that's unnecessary. Which unfortunately I think is propagated by a lot of stuff out there on social media in the organizing space, which is way too perfect and way too fiddly and way too crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if something's being taken as a photograph on Instagram, it's been created for that moment.
Exactly.
You know, and it's not realistic based on, I mean, I've got 2 young children. I mean, I know what that's like. You know, and I know before we had children, my wife and I sat down one day, I was like, "Is something on your mind?" She goes, "I've just got," and this is while she was pregnant, she goes, "I've just got real anxiety around how messy the house is going to get." I was like, yeah, I understand. Yeah, I can understand, because she's very house proud, as am I. And she was just like, there's going to be crap everywhere, and they're going to draw on the walls, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do that. And I was like, yeah, they might. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. I mean, part of that young child phase is just realizing just keeping it to a dull roar is enough, you know? And when I work with families with small children who are about to have their first child, I'm really focused on helping them be realistic about it and not trying to make it perfect. And the one thing that I say to all my parent clients is, however many toys your kids have, you could cut it in half and they'd never notice. Not that you should without them there. That's a whole other topic, but kids don't need that many toys. And I don't know how it is around here, but in the US and in San Francisco, I'm seeing like rooms chock full of toys. And it's more than kids can process. It's like a kid-sized paradox of choice where they have so many options, they don't pick any of them. And so then parents are like, well, I need to get them something new because they aren't playing with any of this stuff. So I need to get them something different. And then, of course, there's the whole grandparent factor, which adds a whole other level of complication. So yeah, kids have a lot more toys than they need in general.
Yeah, I mean, then the grandparents will, whenever they see them, they want to bring a toy,
Yes.
which is lovely, by
Yes.
the way. It's lovely. But you're right. The amount of toys that we have and the amount gets played with is vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife slowly, quietly retires some because Logan would never notice. And,
Yeah.
you know, and just like we just need to kind of just reduce how much, because like most of the time they've just got a handful of things that they play with. And also, you know, the more he's just about to go to school in September. So now he's like, he doesn't need as much because he's not home as often. And then when at the weekend, well, we're off playing anyway, and we've got a few board games that we might play with. But one thing that I've noticed with my wife is that she's really been focused on in teaching him early to clean up after himself.
That's so great. I'm so glad.
Yeah, and I whenever I've come home, I've been like, "Oh, Logan's tidying up." I won't say anything. It's great.
Yeah, and that's a piece that I think a lot of parents are missing, and especially in San Francisco where I live, most couples, both parents are working, even the wealthy ones. It's that kind of place, and so parents do not want to be spending their few precious hours with their children every day doing boring stuff like teaching them how to clean up. And so it doesn't get done as much. And I'm seeing a lot of kids at relatively advanced ages who just aren't picking up after themselves. And it's not because they're lazy, bad kids. It's because no one's ever taught them. And in San Francisco, where you have dual career couples, often the kids are being watched by a nanny. And the nanny's not a parent. They're there to make sure kids are safe and take them where they need to go. But there's a power dynamic there that's very different. And they're not going to be able to as effectively teach those skills, especially in sort of in San Francisco, a lot of the nannies tend to be Spanish speaking, not necessarily English speaking. And that's an even stronger power dynamic. And so they're not going to be teaching your kids how to, clean up after themselves and organize their schoolwork and all that stuff. That's a parent's job. But the parents don't want to be spending their very limited precious time doing that kind of stuff. So it's a hard push-pull. But if you don't teach those things, you end up with a teenager who does not know how to clean their room or do their laundry or pack their backpack for school or remember all their sports gear for practice. And that is rough on a family.
Yeah, I can imagine. That starts getting tough.
Yeah.
And this is all the thing. It comes back to delegating. Like people are creating the mess, and therefore, if you have kind of like a known understanding that we as a family would like to have our home tidy, then people can all do their own home bit. But it sounds like maybe we could start from like if you're contacted for the first time. What is your process? How does it work? Because like no doubt you might have seen some really interesting situations.
Yeah. So generally, people find me either through a referral or online or whatever, and they book a in-person consultation. And so I go to their home and I have a clipboard that I take notes on because I have to have the notes. And I sort of sit down with them and talk and ask them a few similar questions of, what does success mean to you? What do you want to get out of this process? Why are we doing this now? Is there anything that's worked for you well in the past? Are there certain specific challenges that you're struggling with that you don't know how to fix? And then I have them give me a tour of the space so I can really see what we're looking at because, again, self-definition, not very reliable. And then I talk to them about sort of the plan, what we're going to do, and then we book their organizing sessions and get started. And that's actually the hardest part for people is when I walk in for the organizing session for the first time because I get started straight away. And often people are like, oh, do you want a coffee? Like, do you want to sit down? Like, they're very awkward about it. I'm like, nope, we're going to get straight to it. And so we start in a space and we literally, and I say we because I have two other organizers on my team. So it could be one of us, it could be all three of us together, different combos. And we start with the cluttered space and we start pulling everything out of wherever it is and sorting it. Just super basic, like with like, if I'm in a home office, all the pens together, all the paper together, that kind of thing. In a kitchen, all the, kitchen tools together, all the pots together, all the bowls together. And then we walk the client through each category one at a time and ask what stays and what goes. And my default assumption is everything is up for discussion because the simplest way to be organized is to have less stuff. Less stuff puts it on easy mode. And so if you don't use it, if you don't love it, there's really no reason for it to be in the home. And we manage that process completely. So we walk them through, all right, here are all your, kitchen tools, spatulas and brushes and and tongs and all those kind of things. What do you want to keep? And they decide, move away the rest onto the next category. Once we finish that, we have a really good idea of where things should live in the space because along with should this stay or should this go, we're asking supplementary questions because often the clients won't know. They'll say, I don't know. Like I've always had this stuff. It's been around for years. Why would I get rid of it? So then that's where the follow-up like dumb questions come like, what do you use it for? When was the last time you used it? How often do you use it? What do you use it with? And those kinds of questions, we already have a scheme in our heads of how this is going to work out in this space. And then after that, it's a matter of, do we need to source any containers? I am not a container first organizer. I think a lot of people think that organizing is sort of basically decor with containers. So decor with baskets or decor with labeled boxes or whatever. And it's not. We use containers where they're functionally necessary. And of course, I'm going to get nice looking ones and make them match. That's a given. But we only use them where they're necessary. So do we need to source containers? Then we would usually at this point, we're on to like session 2 or session 3. We create a detailed shopping list for the client, exactly what containers we're going to get, how many, what color. Here's the pricing. Once they approve that list, we bring everything over, put everything in containers, put it away, label everything, make it look good. So that's the process.
Yeah, great. And what sort of resistance do you get? So if you're going through the dumb questions and someone starts getting defensive, but I've been using that and I sort of haven't, and and if we go back to is it useful or is it beautiful? Part of is it useful probably needs to have been used in the last few weeks or so. I can imagine people trying to hold on to stuff, but
it depends on the person, and sometimes I have to stop people from getting rid of too much. Because there's a type of client that really wants to be the best client ever. Like they want to be the client that I love the most. And so they'll try to get rid of as much stuff as humanly possible in order to like please me in some weird way. And I'm like, this is not for me. I am here to serve you. I am here for you to give you the things that you want. And so don't get rid of anything to please me. It's not going to work. And it's just going to make you unhappy. So I do have to stop people from getting rid of too much. When people are resistant, I always try to go back to their goals. What's their goal for this space? We have a longtime client who's absolutely lovely, who her stated goal is a minimalist space. Her space is very full. I would not call it overly, it's like she's not a hoarder, but every last nook and cranny has something neatly shoved into it in this space. And so and she struggles with getting rid of stuff, but she's got this goal. I want a minimalist space. So every time she's waffling or struggling, we will go back to the goal. Like, so if we keep this, that means that we're going to have to get rid of something somewhere else in order to get to this goal of this more open, more minimalist space. So bringing it back to the goal for sure. And then, I always tell people, I'm not going to make you get rid of anything. I'm just going to try and explain to you what the effect of this decision is going to be. I can look at a space and say, if we keep everything, I can't do much for you here. I can't bend space and time, right? Like if there's more stuff than space available, I can't fix that. And actually containers make it worse because they take up space. So people often find like once they try to start buying containers, they can store less. So yeah, I'm trying to get people to focus on the goal and make decisions that will serve the goal instead of make decisions based on assumptions or habits or just a long history of having that thing around the house.
The psychology of someone's going through kind of this process and they begin to declutter.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see something in them sort of mentally or physically that starts to, so they kind of, you can see that they physically have less stress or they seem a bit calmer or, oh, I'm so pleased that's done.
Yes. I hear it all the time. I have one client who told me she felt like she'd lost 10 pounds after the first session because she just felt so much lighter. But yeah, there's always that aha moment, and it usually is in the first session, but sometimes it takes a while, where the client's like, they're trying to push through and they're trying to work on it, and I can tell it's feeling really hard. And they're like, I don't even know why I hired this lady in the first place. Like, this is rough. And then all of a sudden, they'll start to look around and there will be less stuff, and we'll have started the skeleton of an organizing system, and they'll go, oh, this is cool. I see where this is going and I like it. And I live for that moment. That's what keeps me going, because it's not about the visual result for me. It's about making somebody's life easier. And one of our families from earlier this year, she just said to me, she was like, you've improved our quality of life. And to me, that's the best endorsement anyone could give.
Yeah. I mean, it truly is though. It really is making a huge difference. Like I know when I think about certain spaces that I go into, I'm always impressed by the space. So for example, I'll give you two basic examples. Like the gym that I go to, the first thing that struck me was that how well organized it was and the space within the gym. And the person that owns it, James, I sort of had a chat to him about it. I was like, I love the space you've got here. I said, quite a lot of gyms feel quite crammed in. He said, yeah, but and he said, well, I wanted it to feel like a big open space so people could train and they could lift properly and all those sorts of things. I said, yeah, and that's one thing he really gets across in it. Like it's a great open space. And you kind of, every time you go there, there's just a feel, you just feel open. You feel, I don't know, it's a hard thing to explain, but it makes it attractive to be there. Like, so it's funny, isn't it? Just having space and how more open that can make you feel or be in some respects.
Yeah. And it goes against our instinct, which our instinct is, if I have a problem, I will add something to my life to fix that problem instead of subtract something. So, in our lovely age of Amazon everything and Prime delivery, if I have a problem, I will buy something to fix that problem and it will be here within hours. And that's the answer. And I cannot tell you how many of those quick problem-solving purchases I help people declutter, because those are not the things that really fix our problems. They kind of put a Band-Aid on whatever's feeling difficult at that moment. And I think the true power in creating a space that you're talking about that feels open is in removing things. And I find that it's not just that less is more, it's that less is more luxurious. It feels more expensive. It feels more expansive. It feels more, high end in a way. Even a simple room with less stuff in it and the stuff in it carefully chosen can be so much more beautiful.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like if you go into a room which just feels open and has no clutter, but the things that are there are specific,
Mm-hmm.
and then they add something to the room. Like it completely changed the entire energy of the room.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say too, there's an aesthetic version of this type of space for every type of taste. And so if somebody's taste is more maximalist, if they like a lot of color, if they like a lot of pattern, you can have a maximalist space that doesn't have clutter. It is totally possible. And I think that's sometimes where people get confused, is confusing the aesthetic with clutter and disorganization. There can be an organized maximalist space. There can be an organized minimalist space. Those are sort of two different spectrums.
It's really interesting because this is like, when you start to reflect on it, this is like the foundation of a relationship, of a home.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can't agree on this piece, if I think about a relationship that I had with my ex a long time ago now, like that was one of the foundations which we just weren't aligned on. We never got it right in the end. And the funny thing is, when I met my now wife, one of the first things I noticed when we moved in together, we were very aligned without even spoken words, which was, and this was an interesting thing, which was like the natural thing that we both did was we both did the jobs to get everything ready so we could have time together. And that was a real definition of, to delay gratification, which was, I understand us, together for 12, 13 years now. Her mindset is, if we get all the jobs done, then we can relax. And we often say that, which is, we just need to do this, 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 and this, and then we can relax.
Uh-huh.
And it's a really funny thing. It's just become how we are, which is probably the thing I was always looking for, in the fact of like, the home's always going to be nice and tidy then. So, all right, you're going to do your thing, I'm going to do my thing. Let's get the kids sorted. Let's do this. Get that. Oh, Logan needs to go do that room. Okay, cool. But everyone just naturally gets stuff done, and then we can sit down and relax.
Yeah.
It's a great way, which has probably been totally unspoken. It's just been how we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That to me is the most successful way to keep a home. I think what's interesting is, as you're saying, it's so key to a relationship working well. It's so key to a family working well. But for some reason, there is very little cultural importance attached to how we take care of our homes. Everyone wants to have a nice home, but nobody's talking about how we take care of them. And it's sort of considered low priority. Like high priority is like your career, your kids, I come from startup land. And so everyone is like, are you an entrepreneur? Are you making waves? All this stuff. But the home is the foundation. And if we don't pay attention to it, then all the other stuff is harder. And this is where you can end up with like, okay, you're a really successful entrepreneur, but how's your home? How's your family? That kind of stuff. And if you can get the home right, and you can get everybody in the home on the same page in getting it right, everything else becomes easier and becomes, a bigger deal.
It's like a true foundation
Mm-hmm.
of getting things right.
Yeah.
Get the home. I've often thought a lot about this, and I had a mindset years and years and years ago, which was, if everything's at work is all right, then I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
And it was definitely the wrong mindset. And I say the wrong mindset, it just was my mindset. Until actually, I think I spoke to a coach one time, and they said, "Are you sure about this mindset? If everything at work is all right, then everything at home is all right." I was like, I think so. And then over time, I realised, I was like, no, it starts with the home. If the home is good, then work becomes better.
Yes.
And it's definitely in that order. If everything's good at home, but then obviously, I'm many years later now with family and little ones. But I think certainly back then it was just all about work, making sure everything was good at work. The home came second to that. It's certainly not like that,
Yeah. And even if you're not married, even when you're single, having your home, whether it's, an apartment you share or your own place, having that be a place of refuge that works well for you is still super powerful to your work life. And I think people tend to underestimate that, because it's like, no, I'm just going to, get by on as little sleep and just get food where I can. And who cares about whether I made my bed, and I'm just going to focus on work. And that isn't actually setting you up for the most success now. And it's definitely not setting you up for the most success in the future when you try to add a relationship and a family on top of that.
I'm interested in your background. Mm-hmm. So I think, did you say Stanford?
I worked at Stanford. Yes. So my first job out of college was working at Stanford. I worked in their Department of Development for a long time. So fundraising, well, not a long time, a few years doing fundraising. And I thought that was going to be my whole career. And I decided to go get an MBA because I was getting a little impatient in the fundraising career. It's a pretty hierarchical field. And so I thought maybe I can accelerate this if I go get an MBA. So I went and did a full-time MBA program at UCLA, which was wonderful. Really enjoyed it. It really opened up my mind to the kind of strategic thinking that I wasn't seeing in fundraising. And so when I went back to interview for fundraising jobs, it was sort of like, oof, I'm really just going to go back to exactly where I was. I'm going to have the same job, the same functions. It's just that there's going to be more zeros at the end of the goal that I have to fundraise. And that was not very appealing, especially because, I was in my MBA program during the Great Recession. And so everyone was coming out, not really being able to get the kind of traditional MBA jobs that people had gotten before. And so people were starting companies. And I thought, if, the guy next to me in my lecture is starting a company, why can't I? I have the same background. And so then it became a question of what company can I start that I don't need to go to more school for and that I like. And talking to family and friends, everybody said, well, you're really organized. You should make something of this. And this was around the time that Marie Kondo, the sort of famous organizer from Japan, was becoming more well-known. And so I thought, yeah, okay, this is really an industry. And not only that, but not a lot of organizers are talking to people like me and my friends were at the time, which was late 20s, early 30s, really in the thick of like getting life started and living in a city and working. At the time, a lot of the organizing content and organizers were focused on like a suburban home and with a stay-at-home mom. And like those things are great, but that wasn't my reality at the time. And so I thought, I'm going to organize for city dwellers. I'm going to organize for people who are working and busy and have small spaces. And the things that we talk about for pantries and garages are not going to be relevant for them because they don't have those things. So yeah, that was the inspiration.
And how did you find your first clients? Did you find it quite simple to kind of go out there and think, right, this is what I'm going to do? I mean, I'm always interested in those first part of the journey.
So the thing that I tell people who want to start a business is the thing you have to do is start talking about it to everyone you meet, because that will hold you accountable. It's so easy to have an idea for a business and to get excited about it and dream about it in your head. It's hard to actually put the pedal to the metal and start the thing and do it. And so I was doing that. I was talking to everyone I met about, I'm going to start this business. It's going to happen. And I was on a trip and we were in Burma, very far away. And there was another woman on the trip who said, I like what you're doing. I trust you. I think you're going to be good at this. When we get home, give me a call. I'll be your first client. And so that was how it started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Just from out having those conversations.
Just having the conversations. There's a sense that a lot of people who I've talked to who want to start businesses are worried that if you don't have it right, everything lined up, all your ducks in a row, everything professional and perfect when you start, that you're doomed to fail. And I quickly realized you just throw something up there and you start. And then you keep making it better. And then you keep adding pieces as you go. Because truly, the stakes are low. You're not making any money. You don't have any clients. No one's seeing your stuff. I mean, I have other organizers that I talk to who are deathly afraid of putting anything on social media because they're afraid of, getting canceled or whatever. I'm like, no one is seeing your stuff. You have 10 followers and they're all friends. Just start. Just do something and then make it better as time goes by. And that's how you build.
Yeah. Yeah. How has the service evolved over that time? So if you think about that first client, when you probably had a whole bunch of imposter syndrome and think, how am I going to do this the first time?
Yeah. Yeah. It has evolved in that now I'm much more confident about telling clients what I know. I'm much more confident in telling them, look, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've seen a lot of clients in your situation. When they make the choice you're about to make, here's what happens. And it's not that I'm telling somebody what to do because I don't believe in that. My version of success is different than my client's version of success, is that I can give them information. I can say, look, I've seen this play out 9 times out of 10. This is how it goes. And that's helpful. And at the beginning, I was much less willing to stand up and say, hey, I think this is not going to get you where you want to go. I also now am much more confident about just doing the work and not needing to ask the client every step of the way, wait, what about this and what about this? I'm much more comfortable with batching it. So when I first started, I would have the client next to me the whole session. And that's exhausting for the client. It's exhausting for me. It doesn't move as fast. Now I do what I talked about earlier, which is I do a sort and then I bring them in for questions. And then I send them away again, do more sorting, bring them in for questions, that kind of pattern. So I'm much more comfortable plowing forward. And that's something that I work with my team on, is getting them to that point where they feel comfortable. Because when you're new, you're like, I'm touching somebody's stuff. What if I do it wrong? So
yeah, I can imagine. And how when you're engaged, so you sort of go in for a few days, a week. What does it look like? And do you have repeat customers?
So I pride myself on only having repeat customers when they want to change the usage of a space. So I try very, very hard to create systems that the client can maintain themselves so that they don't become dependent on us, because I'm working with clients who they're not in a position to have household staff. Like, they're doing well. Our services are expensive, but they're not in a position to have household staff. And so I need to create systems that they can maintain within their own family and maybe with an occasional housekeeper. So my goal is for them to not be a repeat client unless they're changing the function of a space. So we'll do a home office, and then 2 years later they'll call and they say, we're having a baby. Now it's going to be a nursery. And that's great. That's a super fun project. But yeah, try to avoid repeat clients. Yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah. So when you work with someone, it's over a few days or a week. How does it?
Yeah. So it really depends. If for example, we're just doing a pantry, we could get it all done in one day, because we stock some really basic, like sturdy, clear containers in a storage space. And so we'll bring that kind of stuff in for a pantry. That'll probably be all they need. And we can get out all the expired food, organize it, get it in, get it labeled in one day. For some clients, we're organizing their whole entire house, and we'll be working with them for over a period of 6 months to a year.
Wow.
It really depends on how much work we have to do, and then how disruptive our work is to the client's life. I tell most clients, unless you are really, really down with having us underfoot constantly, you really only want to see us once or twice a week. And that can mean it takes months. But there are some clients who say, no, I want to get it done. You're coming every day until we get this finished. And that's fine too.
Interesting. What would be your sort of top tips of like where someone can start getting their home together? Like, do you have like a framework or a methodology of how you work?
Yeah. I mean, the number one thing is, if you don't use it or love it, it's got to go. I mean, I don't even worry about organizing systems. I don't worry about containers. People will always ask me, what should I buy? And my answer is, you should buy nothing. Do not buy anything. Get rid of as much as you can first. And then when you see what's left, you'll have a much better idea of how to organize it and where it should go. I always tell my clients, I can't even tell you what containers we're going to need until I see what you have and where it needs to be stored. And I take measurements and I, count up how many we're going to need and that kind of thing. So yeah, don't buy anything. Get rid of stuff first.
Yeah, I think that's a great advice, isn't it? And it's so interesting because we just, especially with Amazon, as you say, we just accumulate more and more and more. It's only yesterday, funny enough, there's a big cupboard over there, and I was tidying it through. It's been on my to-do list for a while, and I've been looking at just some stands and everything for the microphones and everything, and also for the cameras. And there was one stand I realised I bought 6 times.
That happens.
I can show you in a second. And it's just because that cupboard was a total mess. It's over everything. I was like, right, it's been on my mindset for ages to tidy it. And obviously you're coming today, so you might have inspected everything. Start going through everything, starting to get things kind of laid out, what equipment I have. And then, I've got some equipment I've doubled up 2 or 3 times because I've gone, I know I need that. I found an extra microphone, and I've gone off and bought lots of more microphones. There's loads of extra duplicates. That's one of the big things I've noticed, is that I had a whole bunch of stuff which I've just been buying more of because I didn't know where it was.
That is really, really common. I actually had a client, we were sort of organizing their whole property in a way. This was one of our sort of remote projects. They have this gorgeous property on the North California coast with very architecturally significant main house, and then various outbuildings and storage units and whatever. And so, as you can imagine, keeping all of that organized, and they don't really have a staff. They have like sort of a groundskeeper type person, but they don't really have a staff. So the wife is kind of trying to manage all this herself, where the husband's like back and forth to San Francisco. And so we found so many duplicates between the various buildings. And she turned to me one day, she said, I'm going to save so much money after doing this with you, because now I know where everything is. I'm not going to need to buy anything for months, even years, depending on the category, because they just kept, and they're remote. So they just would stockpile food, paper towels, cleaning products, all that kind of stuff, because it's like, oh, I'm just going to grab some as I'm on my way out to the house because the grocery store is so far and I don't know when I'm going to go next. And now they're going to have a much better idea of what they have. And it's true. Being organized actually can save you a lot of money.
Yeah, I can imagine. What's like some places you've gone into and just thought, whoa, this is too much for me. This is too much. I don't know what to, don't know where to start.
I do a pretty good job now of filtering those out. I try to make my intake form, make it very obvious that I don't do the kind of work that you would need personal protective equipment for. That's kind of where I draw the line. If I would need to wear rubber gloves, I'm not in. And it's not because I judge that. It's not because I think it's gross. I actually have worked on jobs like that, especially when I was getting started. It's very typical of the industry to work for other organizers when you first get started. So I've seen a lot of stuff. And the reason I don't do it is because when you're at that point where the environment becomes unhealthy or dangerous, there's more going on than just sort of garden variety disorganization. And I'm a very action-oriented person, and that's part of why my clients love me. And if you're not action-oriented, you're not going to love me as an organizer. I want to get it done. I want to get to the finish line and give the client the space that they want. And when someone's really struggling with the word in the industry is chronic disorganization instead of hoarding. When people are struggling with chronic disorganization, it's not going to get done anytime soon. It's a long-term process, and you have to be okay with the fact that it's going to backslide hard at various times along the way. And there are organizers who do that work, and they are extremely impressive and fabulous. But it's not a good personality fit for me. I don't have the patience.
Yeah. So it's chronic disorganization.
Chronic disorganization.
Never
yes.
heard of that before.
There's an organization called the Institute for Chronic Disorganization, and they have what's called the Clutter Hoarding Scale. It's actually really interesting. You can look it up. It's a PDF. And basically, it becomes very clear that most people who are like, I'm such a hoarder, are not. Because the scale goes very wide and very deep into kinds of environments where you really feel for somebody who's trying to live in that kind of situation.
So what's the definition? So you'd walk into somewhere and it'd just be total clutter, there's just mess everywhere.
Yeah.
But this is beyond what you're talking about, is beyond it just being disorganized. This is actual mess.
Yeah.
And it's like
there's the pieces of the scale, if I recall correctly. Part of it is amount of clutter. So can you walk? Can you see the floor? Can you walk through a room? There was one project I worked on where we literally just had to start from the front door and just start pulling from the front door because we couldn't walk in. So you just start from where you are and you move in. So it's, can you walk? It's, is there vermin of any kind? So are there rodents? Are there bugs? Truly, yes. I've come across all kinds of bugs. Very fun. And that's important to know, because if there's evidence of rodents, you need to wear an N95 mask, because inhaling rodent droppings is really toxic to humans.
Yeah.
So can you walk? Are there pests? Are the pets in the home being properly taken care of? Is there food that is out and not refrigerated that's now becoming a problem? Like various ways that clutter can turn into dangerous chronic disorganization.
Yeah, and that's way beyond what you're looking
way
to
beyond.
Be in.
Yeah.
You're certainly not there to be cleaning up in that way. It's like, this is about organizing, making your space beautiful.
Exactly.
Kind of decluttering something.
Exactly.
And then the definition of hoarders, like what would you define a hoarder as?
So it's anything on that spectrum where the environment starts to become unsafe for the person living in that home for whatever reason, whether it's stacks of magazines are going to fall on them, whether it's they're breathing in toxic fumes from whatever's going on in the home, like whether they're going to slip and fall because they can't balance. A lot of elderly people who are hoarders, unfortunately, struggle with this. You can get injured inside your own home. So that's kind of where it turns into hoarding. And it's where the hoarding behavior is kind of compulsive. It's associated with obsessive compulsive disorder. So it's not like what I sort of talk about my clients as being sort of with garden variety clutter. So they may not have realized exactly how all the clutter accumulated. And once you kind of work through the clutter, you declutter, and you talk a little bit about, we end up talking about consumption patterns. Like, do you have subscribe and save? I can tell if somebody has subscribe and save because usually it doesn't work very well. So maybe you need to turn your subscribe and save off. Maybe we need to talk about like, maybe Amazon order isn't the first line of defense when we have a problem. Like maybe we need to talk about how do you manage your grocery list because you have a lot of expired food. Like that kind of stuff is what I work with my garden variety clients on. But a hoarder will be using purchasing and keeping behavior in kind of an obsessive way that is sort of beyond something you can talk about rationally with somebody.
So the Amazon subscribe and save. So what you're seeing there, you're just seeing lots of duplicate things being sent every month. They're not necessarily getting used or half of that sort of stuff. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So the rate that subscribe and save starts at will be a rate that you can't get through. And it's one of those things where it's always, you're like, oh, I should really change my subscribe and save. And then you don't. And then it just keeps coming and it keeps piling up. So I'm not a huge fan of it unless you're willing to sort of calibrate it exactly to your usage. Like I have dog food on subscribe and save, for example. And most months I have to push it out. When they say, oh, your auto ship is coming, I have to push it out. But most people won't take the step of clicking through and saying, okay, push out 3 weeks or whatever, because it's just another thing on your lengthy list of things you have to do.
Yeah. I'm worried about your dog now. Is he okay? Is he eating?
She's great. Yeah, she is a big fan of food, and it shows.
Okay, good. All right. I didn't want any animals to be hurt during
No, she's great.
Bless her. Okay, good. Where's this going into the future? So how does your business progress and grow? Like, what are you looking for as it builds? It's
a good question. I'm comfortable with the size that it is now. We serve clients in a very custom way. A lot of the sort of bigger organizing businesses kind of have a really defined set of processes that they take people through. And so it's like, you're going to organize our way as opposed to I'm coming in and saying, I need to find out about you and organize around you and your family. And that's hard to do at scale. But something I think about how I can scale the ideas I want to talk about, because I think a lot of discussion in the organizing space is around the aesthetic of it. And, a lot of the content like on Instagram and TikTok is very much about like, what containers did you buy and how did you put them together? And I really like talking more about the stuff we're talking about today. Like, why do people struggle with disorganization? What are the benefits of getting organized beyond it looking nice? How can you get started? And what are the things to know that you're going to struggle with so that you know that you're not alone? Because these sort of cognitive biases that we have, like delayed gratification, people often feel alone. Like, I'm the only lazy person that can't get it together. And that's not true. We all struggle with this stuff. And so helping people to know that they're not alone is a big, big goal of mine, whether that comes through speaking or through doing more content on social media. I want to think more about that, because when I serve my clients, I do make a difference in their lives, but it's a pretty small scale.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it's been so interesting talking to you. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you feel like maybe we should be covering today in the organizing space?
I think fridge organizing is overrated.
Really?
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
This is a really popular type of content right now, is a fridge restock. And they'll do it on a video and like have a container for each type of thing that goes in the fridge. And I just think it's overkill. It's not adding anything to your daily life. If, and in fact, like I said, containers take up space. So if you've got a small fridge, like in the US, we have these gigantic fridges, but I know they're smaller over here. And if you're trying to feed a family, you can't be cluttering up a fridge with all these containers. They just take up space. And I posted a video about this on Instagram maybe a year ago. And one of my friends actually from a long time ago commented, she said, thank you for saying this, because I've been feeling like I'm not doing enough because my fridge isn't organized like this. And that's kind of my message too, is like, you organize for yourself. It's not to display. I mean, the projects I work on are in spaces that you don't show to guests, really. Like, you don't show your guests like the inside of your kitchen cabinets. You're not showing your guests like your storage space or your garage or whatever. But those are the places that, if they work well, really change your life. So don't think of it as like, I need to get organized because I should be an organized person. It's like, how can I get organized so that I make my own life easier? That's really the point.
So when you're looking into the fridge hygiene, what are you kind of looking for? What does good look like?
Good looks like nothing's hiding in the back going moldy. That's all we're looking for. We're looking to be able to consume the food before it expires. That's all.
Yeah. So it's just keeping it neat, tidy, nothing going moldy.
Exactly. It's all about the function. All about the function.
I love it. Love it. It's been a real pleasure talking to you today. And I think it's been quite an eye-opening conversation in regards to, the situation people can often get into in their homes. But I think what we've talked about quite extensively here is just the benefits, the psychological benefits, the benefit to your relationship. Like it's almost like this is the foundation of your happy home, or your happy foundation of being at home. So it feels like it's such a critical thing for people to be doing, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I absolutely agree.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much, Simon. It's been great.
Thank you.